Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk and ask unanimous consent to consider it as read.
Without objection, and the gentleman's recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you again. This amendment would correct a glaring error in the treatment of Native Hawaiians under this bill's formula funding to the Native American Housing and Self-Determination Act, or NAHASDA. Now, as a refresher to everybody, Native Hawaiians are the indigenous peoples of our country whose ancestral origins are Hawaii and whose ancestors lived in Hawaii before Western contact in 1778. They have been recognized specially in federal law for well over a century, especially in the last couple of decades, dozens of federal laws that have covered them specifically, like other indigenous peoples, including many of the laws that are funded here today. NAHASDA itself assists Native Hawaiians and other indigenous peoples across our country with their often unique and compelling housing needs through two block grant programs. One is a Native American Housing Block Grant Program, which was enacted in 1996, and the other is specific to Native Hawaiians, the Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant Program added in 2000. Now, last couple of years, we've seen funding to the Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant Program funded at about 22+ million per year. And that has been used by the Native Hawaiian community to build up a solid reserve and to spend on critical housing projects. Yet this bill, for some reason, effected two major changes. First of all, the good news, the Native American Block Grant Program was increased 10% from $1.1 billion up to $1.2 billion. However, the Native Hawaiian Block Grant Program was zeroed out, actually zeroed out. Why? The 10% increase went to most of the indigenous peoples of our country, and yet one indigenous group was zeroed out. I can't find any reason myself. The only explanation that I've really been able to come up with, which was mentioned to me, is a concern that the Native Hawaiian Block Grant Reserve is up around 60 million at this point today. But that's exactly how these funding programs work. They are not funded on an equal basis on a yearly basis. Contracts come up when they come up. Projects come up when they come up. Sometimes you got to save up money for a few years in order to handle a big project. And in fact, that's the situation right now in Hawaii, where we now have a reserve of about 60 million, but about 50 million of approved projects by HUD that are in process right now, leaving a very small balance at the end of the years. And obviously, no funding this year would lead to crippling future project fundings and not be able to continue the momentum that has been so important to Native Hawaiians. In any event, this doesn't seem to be a very good issue to cripple a program, since the Native American Housing Block Grant Program, from my understanding, is carrying very large carryover reserves for exactly the same purpose. And so I can only come up with an answer that this is somewhat inadvertent. And my amendment proposes to correct this. It would remedy this by adding back the $22.3 million to the Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant Program. Now, the required offset for this is a portion of the 10% increase for Native American formula funds, which of course is a problem for the Native American formula funds because they want that increase. Now, I support this increase for the Native American Housing Block Grant funds, but I do not think it should come at the expense, the complete expense, of Native Hawaiians. The indigenous peoples of our country, including Native Americans, Native Hawaiians, Alaska Natives, for some decades now have all been in this together. They've risen together and they have fought for these programs together. And so the distinctions that have been put forward in this bill create a division between them. And what this would do would be to restore to the Native Hawaiians the full funding. They're not going to get a 10% increase under my amendment, but they will be restored. And hopefully this will return some parity to the handling of these very worthy programs. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Womack is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. And I've spoken with my friend from Hawaii, and I have pledged to him that I would love to be able to work with him on this particular issue. I wish we'd had a chance to work on it a bit sooner because he understands my concerns about the pay for in it. But he does have my full promise to work on the issue because we too are sensitive to the Native Hawaiians. So with that, I'd yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Quigley is recognized to respond to the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I also support my colleagues' fight for critical investments for Native Hawaiian housing. The housing and community development needs for Native Hawaiians are no doubt dire and important to the work of this committee, and so are the needs of Native American communities. Under Chairman Cole's leadership on the THUD subcommittee last year, I had the opportunity to learn more about the historical inequities across indigenous communities and witnessed his commitment to changing those realities through this bill. And I would like to work with you, Ranking Member DeLauro, Chairman Womack, and Chairman Cole, as well as our colleagues in the Senate, to come to a compromise as we reassess funding priorities this year. You have my commitment that we will continue to fight for the needs of your constituents and Native Hawaiians, and appreciate your highlighting this critical issue today, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. I want to recognize myself quickly to respond to my friend from Hawaii's concerns. I want to assure you I will work with you and we will get this problem taken care of. I think you hit it exactly right. I've seen this problem before where folks that are not familiar with some of these things don't recognize how you have to let money build up. We had this problem with the Navajos a few years ago where they accumulated what seemed to be a rather large balance. They really hadn't. They were working on a much larger project, and it just took time to develop them. And I'm sure housing in Hawaii is probably, if anything, more expensive than most places in the United States. So I want to thank my friend for bringing this to the committee's collective attention. We certainly are going to work with him and deal with the inequity and get this fixed before we have a final agreement. So I look forward to working with my friend, with Chairman Womack, with Mr. Quigley, and of course my ranking member, Ms. DeLauro. This will get taken care of. So yield back. Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Fierce advocacy for his constituency and for Native Hawaiian housing. We failed to provide critical support for this program. And really, whatever the reason, no need to eliminate the program. And I just will go back to say, if we have the 1% increase in defense and in non-defense, and that we could have the opportunity to do this and so forth. But I think we have a commitment amongst everyone that we will work with Chairman Womack, with Ranking Member Quigley, with Chairman Cole, and yourself to restore the funding. So thank you. Thank you for fierce advocacy. That's the way things get done.
Thank you. Any other members wish to address the amendment? Seeing none, oh, excuse me, my friend from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to also rise in support of Mr. Case's amendment to restore funding to this Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant Program. As Vice Chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, I understand the unique impact that federal programs like these have for historically underserved populations. For almost 25 years, this grant program has provided crucial support for the housing needs of low-income Native Hawaiian families who confront the highest median home prices in the nation, placing a massive obstacle in the way of affordable living in their homeland and building generational wealth. It's disappointing that this funding was eliminated less than a year after the tragic Maui wildfire that killed over 100 people, left countless injured, and wiped out billions of dollars in housing. I'm heartened to hear that there could be collaboration between the majority and Mr. Case on this issue, and offer my support in making sure that we're not abandoning the low-income Americans who rely on this program.
Thank you. Are there any other members that wish to address the amendment? If not, the gentleman from Hawaii is recognized for 1 minute to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And from my Native Hawaiian community, I just want to say it's emotional to see that this committee is responsive. I know that they would want to say mahalo nui loa, and we really look forward to working with all of you on this particular issue and on the issues that impact indigenous peoples all across our country. I definitely believe that the two macadamia nuts that I've left on your tables are insufficient given your response. So I do have a couple of really big boxes for you. It's not a bribe; it's just a gesture from my homeland. But thank you again, and with that, I withdraw my amendment.
I want to, again, thank my friend for bringing it to our attention. Look forward to working with him to make sure that we get this problem fixed to his satisfaction.